Hello. It's after lunch. I hope everybody had some good food. Feeling refreshed. Yeah, my name's Danny. So it was entitled How Digital Transformation Will Create a More Sustainable World. So I crossed that out. How digital transformation can help to create a more sustainable world. And there's some questions along the way, all right? So stay frosty. Question number one. You'll all know this, because I know you've been learning about this in school. Which country, in terms of carbon dioxide CO2 emissions, is number one? Biggest polluter. Come on, first hand up gets a chocolate bar. At the back there. Pardon? That's a good one. Anybody else? Any others? Shout them out. These are all great. Yeah, it's China, right? Everybody knew that already, yeah? Okay. Question number two. Where does the UK rank on the list? Shout out the numbers. 12? Close. 8? Higher, lower? Higher or lower than 8? The UK's number 15. Whoa! Question number three. If the internet was a country, where would it rank on that list? Number one. I heard number one. Number 4. There's the internet. Right. So if the internet was a country, it would rank number 6 in terms of CO2 pollution. So when I first heard that, I found it stunning. Now, what the internet? I just sit at home and use the internet. Number 6. So the internet creates about 1 billion tons of CO2 every year. It's a lot, isn't it? It's the 6th largest polluter if the internet was a country. So I'm going to come back to that. But firstly, a bit about me and how I ended up speaking to you guys here today. So I'm from a country. I'm from a country called the UK, but I work for a company called Digital Detox. And we call ourselves DD, right? So what DD's really interested in is the intersection of people and technology and the planet. So what can we do in terms of design online that will give people a better experience online, potentially improve their well-being, but also do it in a way that's performant and has less impact on the planet, because the internet's the 6th largest polluter. So I grew up in this place until I was about 6. This is a lovely part of the country called Wolverhampton in the centre of the country. It's quite a grey place. And although it's home to arguably the greatest football team in the world, I left there when I was about 6. And I went to live in this place. This place is Dorset on the south coast of England. That's where I grew up. Lovely place. It's got Durdle Door. It's got beautiful bluebells. It's got Corfe Castle and places like that. So I grew up riding through the countryside, playing outside, and swimming in some really, really cold water. But that's where I grew up. So then I left there to go to university, and I'd been playing guitar at that point for about 15 years. And I had a dream, this was the dream, that I would play in a band and I would tour around the world. This was the reality. I ended up playing to like a couple of blokes, one of whom would have a dog, and that was it. But it wasn't as bad as it first appeared. And the reason why I pointed out is that I think everybody in this room will put their hands up and say, yes, I've made a mistake on the way to where I am now. So that was a big one for me. It wasn't as bad as it first appeared, because I was learning all this amazing stuff at university. I was learning about language, and literature, and communication. At the same time, so I went to university quite a while ago. It was 1993 to 1996 that I was at university. But at the same time, everything was changing. There was a proliferation of devices. Things were changing. Online was becoming this big new thing that everybody was a little bit scared of, but also really getting into. This picture's a little out of date in terms of when I went to university, but it shows the difference between two papal inaugurations and the difference between how both were reported. This is how the internet looked when I was at university. There's BBC, Gordon Brown before being a prime minister. Apple, that's a sexy site. If there's designers out, that's a sexy site, isn't it? It's changed a lot now. There's the Facebook, because it wasn't, before it was Meta, it was Facebook. Before it was Facebook, it was called the Facebook. And I actually have some chums who have original addresses, email addresses from the Facebook. And it's just a number. They're 10,126 at thefacebook.com because they went to university in the States. And Google, oh my word, look at it. So anyway, I'm this boy from Dorset, interested in being outside in the environment, via Wolverhampton, that reminded me how grey the world could be, despite a great football team. And I was interested in the environment, creativity, that communication, and I ended up working in digital, creating websites and applications. Basically, when I was doing music, one of the independent labels I was with, they said, hey, this internet looks really good, Danny. Could you build us a website? And I looked it up. I spoke to some people. I had a go, and then haven't really looked back since. So since then, I've worked with some of these guys. Well, all of them, to be fair. What I've also been able to do is travel. So this country bumpkin from Dorset ends up working with Facebook and Aviva and RBS and Virgin and Liberty Global. Put up your hand if you've heard of Liberty Global. So there's these brands out there that own brands all over the world. Liberty Global's one of them. And it owns Virgin Media in the UK. So I got to travel all over the place. Most recently, I went to Texas in the United States. And I talked about some of this stuff at a place called South by Southwest, which is one of the biggest interactive conferences in the world. It was fantastic fun. So I talked at that, and talking in front of all those guys, as ever, was like an out-of-body experience. The nerves of presenting never go away. You just kind of lean into it, and it starts to get easier. While I was out there, there's a music festival immediately following the tech one. So what we got here? Oh, yeah. Up in the top right, that's me watching Mark Zuckerberg from Meta, Facebook, the Facebook, talk about the metaverse. Quite a clever guy, actually. He streams in live, told us all about it. It's brilliant. On the left is Paris Hilton. I ended up at a party with Paris Hilton DJing, although I don't think she was DJing. She was just like pressing buttons on something pre-recorded. And I think that's Tom Holland down there, Spider-Man, who was speaking. So it's like, if you told me when I was a boy growing up in Dorset that I'd end up doing this stuff, I would never have believed you. So I do find myself being very grateful for it. So now I work with this lot. So this is some of DD. We're about a 50-50 split, really, in terms of girls and boys, men and women. And these are some of the roles that I work with. So people that do code, people that design, people that organize projects and things like that. My role is a client partner. Can anybody tell me what a client partner does? Please. Any ideas? Or I'll pick somebody. Right, what does a client partner do?
I literally have no idea.
Yep, that's my job. Carl, what does a client partner do?
Same. I have no clue.
No idea. Right. There's lots of job titles like that. Essentially, what do I do? I'll shape jobs with clients when we're working out what it is they need to do. And then that job will get sold, and it'll be a project to do something like build an online platform. And then while we do it, I'll make sure we deliver on what we put together. Make sense? So kind of not a project manager, a bit of business development, look after the money, look after the client, and make sure that what we've put together gets realized and delivered. So you've got to be good at things like communication. You've got to be able to count, that kind of thing. But I enjoy it. It's really good fun. I enjoy going to work every day. So what? Right. So climate change, if I ask you all to put up your hands if you think climate change is a big deal, show me. Right. Put up 2 if you really think it's a big deal. Right. So I don't need to tell you that, do I? Climate change is a big deal. Right. Flooding events commonplace around the world. I was interviewing a project manager who lived in Queensland about 4 weeks ago. So, do you know about the flooding in Queensland? Unheard of. They had something called a rain bomb that dropped about 1.5 meters of water in 72 hours, which I understand is a lot of water. This guy I'm interviewing, he had friends living in the background on this call because he lived in high ground and they needed a place to live. So that's there, right in my world, in my daily life. This is a record temperature in Antarctica of 18 degrees. That's as warm as it is today. It's about 18 degrees today. This was recorded in 2020 by an Argentinian, excuse me, I've got something called pulsatile tinnitus in this ear, and sometimes it makes me feel a bit weird. It makes me feel like I'm going to fall over. So I'll sit down for a bit and I'll be fine. So a record temperature in the Antarctic of 18 degrees. That's pretty warm, warmer than it is today. So do you remember earlier on I was saying that the internet is 1 billion tons of CO2 every year? That's the same as the aviation industry, so the airplane industry. 2% of human-induced CO2 emissions. What about digital? I think I can stand up again now without falling over. I'm okay. It's this thing. Okay, so the internet. This is a guy called Professor Mike Berners-Lee. Have you heard of this guy? He's got a really famous brother called Tim, who invented the World Wide Web. Okay. So Mike says, we don't think about it, pollution online, because we can't see the smoke coming out of our computers. But the carbon footprint of IT is huge and growing. So again, 1 billion tons of CO2, the 6th largest polluter if it was a country. Okay, so I've been speaking for what, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, something like that? Every 60 seconds online, again, it's a question. Every 60 seconds online, how many hours of content do you think are uploaded to YouTube? Have a go. 10? 1 million? 400? Yeah? Pretty good. It's 500. Close. How about number of people tweeting? Shout it out. What do you think? 200,000 every minute. Instagram stories shared? 1 million. 695,000 every minute. TikTok uploads. Anybody use TikTok? I don't. Go and have a go. Sorry?
1 million.
1 million. You were close. About 5,000. Here's some other numbers. So this is every 60 seconds. Okay. There's a lot of usage. So just being a bit more serious for a sec, how does that energy get used? So when you view an internet page, electricity, energy is used to disseminate that page and deliver it to you. So about 30% of the energy goes into data centers. So lots of you will know what data centers are, but racks of computers that store information that can be called to be presented in the World Wide Web. 30% is a network sending the data to you, a mobile network, a fixed line, and so on. And then the rest is your device. And all of these things need charging, don't they? So that's how the energy gets used. So just to give you some examples, and this is Google. This is searching on Google, right? So when you search on Google, it's about 0.2 grams of CO2 that gets emitted. Goes up a lot if you've got a high or very heavy search term. So you're searching for videos, this kind of thing, right? But about 0.2 a search. There's about 63,000 Google searches every second, which is over 5.5 billion a day. What that means is there's about 1,000 tons of CO2 a day produced from Google searches by these data centers and the serving of that data, which is about 400,000 tons of CO2 a year. Basically, to translate that, it means we need about 500,000 acres of mature forest to offset that. It's a lot, isn't it, for searching on Google? Emails. A regular email, about 4 grams of carbon. But again, why would it go up to 30 grams? I heard it in there somewhere. Shout it out. Attachments, isn't it? You send a heavy attachment. So, if everyone in the UK sent one less thank you email a day, I used to do it, not anymore, but I would say thank you for your thank you email. I really look forward to seeing you and thanking you in person, right? But if everybody in the UK, 65 million people, sent one less email a day, that's almost 16,500 tons of carbon. What does that mean? There's about 81,000 flights between London and Madrid, or taking almost 3,500 diesel cars off the road. So when you say it like that, it's like, oh my word. It really brings it home. And part of the problem we have is making people aware of the fact that there is a problem and how it links to the internet, and changing some of those habits. So I talked about data centers. They consume about 3% of the world's electricity. It'll be about 8% by 2030. I've heard the metaverse mentioned a couple of times today, and I've heard Mark Zuckerberg talking about the metaverse in the States. And the way in which the metaverse draws its power and for which sources will be a big part of that data center number. And those data centers obviously store data. Only about 6% of the data ever created in the history of mankind is used regularly. About 94% is just sat there. So we need to curate that data. We need to get rid of it, because it's costing us the equivalent of the airline industry to store that data every year. It's mind-boggling, isn't it? I didn't believe it when I heard this stuff. By 2025, we'll all have about 5,000 interactions a day, about one every 17 seconds, and that new technology and those interactions need energy to power it. So again, that goes back to the data centers. So 3 things, and I know I've got a couple of minutes left, so I'll just race through, okay? So 3 things. So educate customers. So in my role, one of the things I can do is help educate customers to make greener decisions, right? So these customers are increasingly demanding in terms of where they go and how they get what they're looking for. And what I'm interested in is adding things like energy ratings to websites. Maybe that will even affect your Google search, right? So we can help educate customers to make greener decisions in this digital industry. Again, helping customers online, the amount of time they spend online uses more energy. So one of the things we can do in digital design and development is we can curate those pages. Has anybody heard of things like user experience, service design, interaction design? All of those guys are involved in making sites more efficient, helping people get to the things they need to do more quickly, and through doing that, they can also help them make a greener choice because they're not spending as much time, wasting time online. Educate customers. 2, make a difference. So we can make a difference as designers and developers in the type of work that I do and my colleagues do. So we can design and build with sustainability in mind. Again, I won't dwell on this, but we talked about page weight earlier. This is the average page weight on desktop and mobile. So essentially what I'm saying is when we educate our digital teams to make better choices about the use of things like video and imagery and the format of that imagery and how it's presented, they can make an effect on those, the weight of those digital pages. I mentioned Vodafone here because one of the things we've been doing at DD is working with Vodafone to consult with and train their internal design teams so that those design teams make better choices about the weight of Vodafone pages. The reason why I mention it is if we make a change on the DD website, it makes no meaningful difference. If Vodafone do, it can make a huge difference because those pages are seen by millions and millions of people worldwide every single day. Raise awareness. So hopefully, what I've been talking about here and the stuff you're learning about in school is making you guys more aware. But do talk to your mums and dads about it, uncles and aunties. Keep spreading the word, because I don't think people know well enough what a polluter the internet is and how much you can help by working in it and making better choices in design and page weight and so on and so forth. So, to wrap up, working in digital, you can learn about some of the most exciting new developments and inventions. You can get to travel all over the world. Country Bumpkin went to Texas. That was brilliant fun. You can work with great people. I really do. Work with some really inspiring, talented people. You can wear trainers to work, although I put smart shoes on today because I knew I was talking to you guys in a school. But you can shape decisions that can help to create a more sustainable world. Why? Because the internet is the 6th largest polluter if it were a country on the planet. That's it. Thanks very much for listening. Cheers.
So now we'll do some questions. That was amazing, Danny. I've learned so much, and it's something that I want to learn more about, and I hope you've all enjoyed that. Has anyone got any questions? I've got some canned ones already, but has anyone got any? Because that was such a thought-provoking talk. I'm looking up top as well. Anyone? No? Okay, I'm going to go with mine. So what can we all do to make the most difference, I guess? Like if everyone's sitting here thinking, wow, okay, I'm trying to recycle at home, now do I not use my phone anymore, or what should I do?
Let's go back a slide. I had some notes on here. So, yeah, there's a few tips, because it's all about that scale. When I mentioned Vodafone, it's all about scale. So, I was talking to someone a second ago who was saying, I can't convince my parents to refill washing powder and things like that. Right. So, because the parents think, makes no difference. But the point I'd make, it's the other 10 million people doing the same thing that makes the difference. That's why the small change is so important. So, some tips in terms of digital. Unsubscribe from emails you don't need. Don't just delete them, please. Bookmark sites you use frequently. Don't search for it every time. We talked about the weight of those search queries. Don't send massive file attachments. Add a link instead. Use Google to share them, that kind of thing. Power down devices when you aren't using them, just like I've done here. Except I haven't, have I? So I'm very naughty. And download instead of stream, right? So just some tips. But the main thing is just keep doing it. Because if you do the tiny little thing, it's all the other people joining you on it that makes a difference.
And does that, because I always think with powering down devices, the power to power down and power up, if you're doing that too often, does that have an impact? Or are we getting a bit too meta into it there?
Well, maybe. But it depends on the device.
Yeah.
Right? So some devices, like an old Dell computer, can take a long, long time to warm up. A Mac computer, like a new MacBook, won't.
Yeah.
One of these won't. I think this is a 7.
Yeah. Cool.
So, yeah, depends on your device, but power down is usually better.
And what are the main kind of tricks that you look at for websites? Like, are there easy things that are your quick wins for a client to go, do this, 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 and this to make a difference?
Yeah, it's definitely all about the page weight. And dependent on the client we'll work with, we'll be able to influence where they get their power from in terms of where they store in data centers and things like that. So the biggest difference will usually be more renewable, greener choices made in terms of their data centers, and then we'll start looking at individual things like the page weight and use of imagery and video and things like that.
Amazing. Anyone, any other questions? No, stunned into silence and thinking about when to not search again in future. I know I am. Since I've become more aware, I really have been more conscious about searching. Like you wouldn't sit and boil the kettle tens of times at home. Like, why would you keep searching? So being more tight as well on the search phrase you use to make sure you're not having to search again afterwards. So amazing. Round of applause again for Danny. Perfect.